In 1241, the Mongol army reached the gates of Vienna. Not Genghis Khan, he was already dead. This was his grandson, Batu Khan, and he had just spent 2 years destroying everything between Mongolia and Western Europe. Poland, Russia, Hungary, gone, one after another. In 2 years, the Mongol Horde had killed more people than the First World War. Vienna was next. Then something strange happened. Batu Khan stopped. He turned around. He went home. Europe never found out why. Some say plague in the army. Some say political problems back in Mongolia. Some say he simply decided Europe wasn't worth it. Nobody knows. But here's the question that changes everything. What if he hadn't stopped? What if 300 modern special operators were the reason the Mongol Horde never reached Vienna? To understand what 300 operators are walking into, you need to understand what the Mongol Horde actually was. This was not an army. Armies have supply lines, fixed formations, predictable patterns. The Mongol Horde was something Europe had never encountered and has never encountered since. 150,000 mounted warriors who had been riding and fighting since childhood. No fixed supply chain. They lived off the land and their horses. No single point of vulnerability. Hit one flank and 3 others appear from directions you weren't watching. They had defeated every army they had ever faced, not by overwhelming numbers alone, by speed, by coordination across distances that no communication system of the era should have been able to manage, by a commander, Batu Khan, who understood psychological warfare the way modern generals understand air power. By 1241, they had crossed the Carpathian Mountains through 3 different passes simultaneously, destroyed the Polish army at Legrica, destroyed the Hungarian army at Mohi, and were camped on the banks of the Danube, looking at Vienna like men deciding whether to order dessert. 300 modern operators standing between that and the rest of Europe. The question is not whether modern weapons are superior. The question is whether 300 men can stop something that moves like weather. They do not try to stop the Horde in open field. That would be suicide dressed up as a military operation. Instead, they study the Horde the way the Horde studied its enemies, by watching first. For 72 hours before any engagement, reconnaissance teams fan across the Danube plain, mapping the Mongol formation. Not just numbers, patterns. The Horde moves in a specific structure, a vanguard of lighter cavalry probing ahead, the main body following 2 to 3 hours behind. The flanking units operating 10 to 15 kilometers on each side, and the supply train, horses, food, equipment, moving in a protected corridor through the center. 300 men cannot destroy all of that, but they do not need to. They need to destroy one thing. The Mongol command structure operates through a system of relay riders, messengers on fast horses carrying orders from Batu Khan to unit commanders across the entire formation. Remove those riders and the Horde's coordination collapses. Not permanently, but long enough. Long enough for what? Long enough for the Danube, running high in spring flood, to become the obstacle it was always supposed to be. The plan is not to fight the Mongol Horde. The plan is to make the Mongol Horde fight the river. But on the first night, the Mongols do something nobody anticipated, and the entire plan has to change before dawn. The Mongol vanguard moves faster than any reconnaissance model predicted. Not hours ahead of the main body, minutes. The lighter cavalry are already across a secondary ford 12 kilometers north of the main crossing point, a ford that does not appear on any historical map because the Mongols found it themselves, the way they always found things, by sending riders in every direction until one of them didn't come back. By the time the operators realize what is happening, 3,000 light Mongol cavalry are already on the western bank. This changes everything. The river plan depended on the Horde approaching a single crossing point. Now there are 2, and if there are 2, there may be 3. The decision comes fast. Half the force pivots north to contain the ford crossing. The other half holds the original position at the main Danube crossing, 150 men on each side, against forces that outnumber them by margins that stop being meaningful at a certain point. The northern team hits the vanguard before dawn. The Mongol riders have never heard suppressed gunfire. They have never seen muzzle flash appear from a position with no visible person attached to it. The first volley drops 17 riders in 4 seconds. The horses panic before the men do. 3,000 light Mongol cavalry in a river ford with panicking horses and invisible attackers is not a military situation. It is a controlled disaster. The ford crossing stops, but the sound carries across the plain. And on the eastern bank, 150,000 warriors wake up to a noise none of them have a word for. Batu Khan does not panic. This is the most dangerous thing about him. Every account from the campaigns describes the same quality, an absolute refusal to react emotionally to the unexpected. When something surprised him, he slowed down. He watched. He gathered information before he committed. He gathers it now. Scouts fan out westward in every direction. They find firing positions, but no bodies. They find shell casings, but no camp. They find horses dead from wounds with no arrows in them. They bring all of this back to Batu Khan, and he sits with it for 2 hours before he speaks. Then he makes a decision that demonstrates exactly why his army had never lost. He abandons the ford. He abandons the main crossing. He pulls the entire horde 60 kilometers south, finds a third crossing point, and begins moving the army across there, slowly, methodically, using the main body to screen the crossing while the flanking units create pressure at the original 2 points to hold the operators in position. 300 men suddenly find themselves holding 2 positions against forces they cannot see, while the actual crossing happens somewhere they are not. The operators call it immediately. They collapse both positions and race south, on foot and on horses seized from the vanguard. 300 became 250 in the space of 1 night, and dawn is still an hour away. They reach the southern crossing. They hold it for 4 hours, and then Batu Khan does the one thing that no military model had prepared for. He sends a messenger. Not an attack, a single rider, unarmed, carrying a white cloth, riding toward the operator positions at a walk. The messenger speaks in Mongolian through an interpreter seized from the Hungarian campaign. The message is simple and precise. Batu Khan has identified that there are very few of these fighters. He doesn't know what they are or where they came from, but he recognizes the quality of the resistance, and he's offering terms. Move aside, let the horde cross, and every man on that riverbank walks away alive. Batu Khan had done this before. He always gave enemies the chance to surrender before he destroyed them. It wasn't mercy, it was efficiency. Destroying a resisting army costs horses and time. Accepting a surrender costs nothing. The operators do not move aside. The messenger goes back, and Batu Khan sends everything. Not the vanguard, not a flanking unit, the main body, the core of the Mongol horde moving toward the southern crossing at full speed. The ground shakes before they are visible. The sound arrives before the sight, and then they appear on the horizon, stretching from one edge of vision to the other, moving with the specific, terrible patience of something that has never had to hurry because it has never needed to. 250 men against the full Mongol horde. The next 4 hours are the most expensive 4 hours in the history of special operations. They do not try to stop the crossing. They make it cost more than Batu Khan budgeted. Every position is chosen to force the Mongols to move through choke points. Every engagement is designed to end before the Mongols can encircle. They hit and move, hit and move, burning through ammunition with the discipline of men who know exactly how many rounds they have left and what each one needs to accomplish. The Mongols crossed the Danube. That was always going to happen, but it took them 4 days instead of 1. 4 days of fighting a force they cannot pin down, cannot identify, cannot understand. 4 days of Batu Khan, the man who never reacted emotionally, sitting in his command tent watching his losses mount against an enemy with no supply line, no reinforcements, and no intention of stopping. On the 4th day, something shifts in the Mongol camp. Not a military shift, a psychological one. The Horde had always moved forward, because forward always worked. Every obstacle had always eventually broken. But this obstacle was not breaking. It was bleeding. The operative force was down to 190 men by this point, but it was not breaking. And an army that has never faced something it cannot eventually break does not know what to do with the experience. Batu Khan receives new information from Mongolia on the 4th day. The great Khan Ogedei has died. He is needed home for the succession. He uses it. He orders the retreat. Whether he would have retreated anyway, whether the operators had broken something in the Horde psychology that made the Mongol messenger from Mongolia feel like relief rather than obligation, nobody can say. The Horde turns east. Vienna survives. 190 operators reach the extraction point. 110 do not. The debrief happens 3 weeks later. The question on the table is the same question that follows every successful mission with unacceptable costs. Was it worth it? And here is the part that has no clean answer. The Mongol Horde that turned back in 1241 eventually returned. Not to Europe, they never reached Vienna, but they reached Baghdad 17 years later, the same force rebuilt under Hulagu Khan. And in 1258, they destroyed the House of Wisdom and killed 1 million people in 3 days. 300 operators at the Danube saved Europe. They did not save Baghdad. The 110 men who didn't come back, they held a river crossing for 4 days against the greatest army the medieval world had ever produced. Whether that was worth it is not a military question. It is the only kind of question that matters. This is a fictional what if. The Mongol Horde was real. What they did to the civilizations they destroyed was real. And the question of why they turned back from Vienna in 1241, historians still argue about it today. One question for the comments. If you were in command, do you hold that river crossing knowing the cost? Like the video, subscribe for the next mission. See you in the next one.